question. Like, is it easier to write a website now than 7 years ago?
I'm gonna say no, but no. I mean, honestly, it's like no. It's cooler. It's much cooler. If you have 100 developers, it's definitely like it works. Like the things of unit testing, linting, the consistent type stuff, right?
Yeah.
And but right now, I'm totally enjoying it. But sometimes you look at that as like, for example, the setup of the project was not, was not a problem. Yes, we didn't do unit tests and things like that. But I remember, like in the previous company, like Youssef had extended jQuery stuff to like it was so nice that you just use it. There was like, okay, we didn't have the concept of unit tests, I think, at that time when we were doing that stuff.
Yeah.
But man, everything was written in like 6 months. Like we were like a team of, how many were we? Like I think a team of 4 people or 5 people. We wrote something like 3,000 pages. Like it was just like,
yeah,
quick. But
yeah, I remember like when my first project getting into web development, it was like this project that our company was behind on. I've been like messing with Angular because it was just about to release. Angular 2 was just about to release. I was like, hey, do you want me to try to do it? And I got it like done. Like there's all kinds of bugs, but like kind of feature complete in like a month. And I was like, this is like, I could do this. I could make a career out of this. And now I look back at that, and I was like, how in the world did I do that quickly compared to like now? I feel like I do it much solider. This was probably like maybe less bugs, and it's cooler, like we were saying. Yeah. But it's like, it would take me like 3 months now, I think. So
yeah. And the big thing is like, if you want to debug something on the page, back then it was just so easy. Just like you just go to like right click and step through the code and just go and figure out exactly what's happening. Now you have to be a little bit of a wizard to do it on the browser.
Right. Yeah. So like the I'm big on RxJS. One of the hardest things about that is like it floods the call stack like all the way up. So debugging is like really, really hard versus like I was working on a project with React. I was like, oh, the dev tools, like even just a regular Angular project, if you're not using RxJS too much, it's kind of hard to step through things because it's hard to see how things play from like service to component. But messing around with React, it's like, oh, this is a very straightforward flow. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into like some of the stuff we talked about yesterday, or not yesterday, but last week. So for the audience, there's this huge elephant in the room you're not aware of. So we're going to point it out to you. Last week we had this amazing conversation, like life-changing. Maybe not that big, but it was really good. And I forgot to hit record in StreamYard. And I felt so bad. And Youssef and Hicham were so nice to me, and it was really interesting too because Youssef was making some really awesome points about like stoicism and leadership being not affected by like the circumstances. And I mean, y'all really showed that when I brought you some really unfortunate news. So I really appreciate that. But yeah, Hicham, do you want to start in? I really want to sort of retell like we did last week your story. For the audience, check out Youssef's podcast we had a while back. Really cool story about him, his background. Really cool immigrant story coming to America and like making a career here. It's like building a life is super cool. And Hicham, I think we're going to hear like a similar story from you too. So do you want to jump into it?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up. So I'm from Morocco. So
yeah,
and I went to. So I grew up in a country called Kenya, and my formative I think up until the last year of high school, I spent it in that beautiful country where it was endless spring. So and I was in a like my schooling was really in a French school. So I grew up, speaking English, French. The country itself was English, so I was able to learn and speak English at a very very early stage. My accent is probably not what it is right now, but back then it was like I don't want to say the Trevor Noah accent, but something something with that like that.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Like Trevor Noah, is he South African?
He's South African, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think I sound like that. Actually, I don't know what I would have sound like. When I came to the U.S., people couldn't really place my accent. It was English, but it wasn't. It wasn't. There was something to it. So I grew up over there. I went to French school. I came back to Morocco. My father was like working in the embassy in Kenya and stuff. So we came back and I was in this French system for so long that when I graduated high school, I was like, you know what, I don't want to do any more French stuff.
Yeah.
I wanted to go and like they asked me like, what do you want to do? It's like, I wanted to go and do the stuff in the US. And at that time it wasn't a I think we spoke last week. It wasn't like, hey, I'm coming here planning to immigrate or anything like that. It was a lot of my friends, a lot of people have come to the US to study. And they'd come back to their countries and all that, but still, the reason why it's like, the U.S., I think we're going to go back to that, to the reasoning, is like the U.S. was, all its forms of entertainment, also like of sports, like who do you think when you think about, the best in entertainment, the best in this, it's all Americans. So I'm gonna, spit out some names. Like, the top was like Michael Jackson. Then, basketball, you had Michael Jordan. I know you mentioned Mike Tyson. I started thinking about it. I was like, you know what? You're right. Like when Mike Tyson was actually going to go in the fight, or when he lost for the first time, it was like big news all over the place. So you know what? Mike Tyson too. There's
a lot of mics.
There's a lot of mics. Yeah. Mike Tyson. And we spoke. There was like the Stone Colds.
Yes.
The Hulk Hogan's.
I still have him here on the desk.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. And I mean, all forms. And I forgot to mention one last week was but it was a product of the U.S. nonetheless, but everybody knows him. Superman.
Oh yeah.
That's Superman, Batman. There's like, but that symbol, like you see it, and you know where that is. So there's so many things. In that list of Stone Cold, you can put The Rock there too.
Yeah.
And then there's the Arnold and the Slides, the Arnold Schwarzenegger and the Stallone. Just think about those. I mean, there's probably more, but just that, you're like, you see all that, you're like, you know what? I need to come here and check this out.
Yeah.
And there's the one thing you actually think that what you see on TV, that's reality. but there is this aura of coolness that definitely when you're about to take the flight to come here, that's like, you're like, well, okay, I'm coming to the place where all these people came from, which it's actually really nice. I didn't want to go to a French. I didn't want to go to France. I didn't want to get a degree from there because, I mean, everybody in Morocco when they finish high school, that's the thing you're gonna do. You're gonna go to France. You're gonna get your degree.
Yeah.
And you can do whatever you want to do. I thought a bit different. I was like, I got tired of that system. I wanted to go to something new. I mean, notwithstanding these characters over here, but also, it also seemed from then that if you want to do something and be the best at it, or be good at it, or have like, you got to come to the place where it's happening. Where and in the U.S. was definitely that. I mean, everybody looked at the U.S. as like, okay, this is where we went to the moon. We did so many innovative things. Like imagine, went up to the moon with systems that are weaker than my phone that I have with me right now. It's just some amazing accomplishments. So my dad.
So one interesting thing, Hicham, if you don't mind me interrupting a little bit. Like if you look at the things we had for characterizing the U.S., like for the most part, these are cultural things. Like we have like a lot of sports here, but it's mainly like the culture stuff that's felt like it kind of bled out from America. And this is like circa late 80s, mostly 90s, right?
Yep.
The stuff we have here versus like the thing that like stood out was like going to the moon. Like this was. I think this was 1969.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So
it was a monumental thing. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. But that's still resonates all over the place. Like America went to the moon.
Right.
It's not just went to space. I mean, Russia went to space, and so many people went to space, but then only one place went to the moon, and came back. It just went to the moon and came back. That's the one small step for man, giant leap for mankind. That was like it's not just here that they know that this is all Neil Armstrong. That's a common.
Yeah.
Everybody knows who that guy is.
Well, that was a moment that belonged to all humanity, and that was really cool from like the quote there. Like it wasn't one small step for America. It was one small step for man.
Yeah. I wonder how long it took him to. Or I forgot this. Like, did he do it on the spot? He thought about it on the spot, or
that'd be interesting to find out. It feels like the kind of thing he prepped.
Yeah,
like you got some time. I feel like this is about to happen.
Yeah, but if it wasn't prepped, that would have been even much cooler, right? And it's hilarious when people say like, "Hey, this is all staged." So I'm like, okay. Like I think maybe the most monumental things in the history of the world, and I mean, hopefully it's not staged. But,
so it's interesting. Like there's I don't know. I don't want to go too deep into the conspiracy realm of things, but I was watching they have on YouTube like the original broadcasts of this, and they have like all kinds of like they kind of call it out, but it's not like super obvious. They like show animations of what's happening to the rocket, and they don't really know. Like they're broadcasting live, but they don't really know a lot of this stuff. So they just kind of like are staging it to make it look good on television. And they even do have like the set where they show like the thing landing inside of a set. So it's like it's kind of understandable how some of these theories spill out. This is like I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's been staged. I think it's a real thing. But nowadays,
I think that's the most likely scenario.
But I digress. So going back to the French educational system. So I just finished that, and
well, could you explain a little bit about what this is? Because I don't think a lot of people would understand like some of the specifics of like how the system works. So
so the French system is a very, very strong education system. So if I had kids right now, I would definitely if I had the choice, the money, and I mean there's a school here. I mean we live in DC right now. There's a school in Maryland. There's the French school over here. It's it's the price is as if you're going to college, but if I had kids and had the chance to educate them, the choice I would make would probably be that French education system is because you come out like you learn so many things and if you become strong at it, like there's little choice in the beginning of what you learn. So you are going to go through math, physics, chemistry, French, English. Like there's so many things that is thrown at you, and then like Youssef said last week, the one thing that that happens is that you get to a certain level, and then you make a choice if you want to do. And this is what I've been. So I don't know. I don't think it has changed by now. Maybe they give more choices now. Maybe there's some changes. I haven't researched this one, so this is like based on experience. So I don't know if it changed for the better or became a little bit different. But at the time I went, I had to choose between sciences, economy, and literature. So depending on some scores that tests that you take, and your yearly scores, right, like your class scores, you either have the opportunity. So if your scores are pretty high among everything, you're able to go to the sciences, right? Sciences means that you're going to take a more concentration in math, physics, chemistry, and biology. If you went to economy, then it's more focused on some economic classes. You still do math, physics, but you're doing it at a less intense, I guess. And even literature, you still do some math, physics, but and chemistry, but lesser and lesser. But you're focused there on literature. Right? So
science, it's kind of tiered. Then it sounds like like science is where you want to be.
Yeah, the interesting thing is if you do science, you can do all. Like the way it's set up is that if you do science, you can do. If you later on when you go to college or whatever, you can choose to do economy. You can choose to do economy, or you can choose to do literature. Like if you did sciences,
Right.
If you did economy, you can do economy and literature. You can't do science. You can't go to college and say, "Hey, I want to do sciences." If you're taking that study, if you're taking literature, then you can't do it. Well, I think at that time you couldn't do economy. You had to do literature. I don't know. It always made me feel that they thought that literature was like a third class citizen.
Yeah.
And but.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's maybe like the opposite of the way I tend to think of things. Like the ability to tell a story and to connect with people at some human level, kind of like what we're trying to do here. Like that's the core of everything, man. That's what it seems like to me, at least. Like if you don't have that, maybe you could probably do some science, I guess. So maybe that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, it's like once you've been in this. At least in the science or in the literature, you're just going to keep doing that, and you're going to try to do, whatever your job's going to be in the future, it's going to be something related to that. Science is a little bit better. It just opens the door a little bit more to what you can do. Yeah. But the difference, I think, so when you come out, you have a very strong foundation. You have a very knowledge. You're very knowledgeable. You're very like the ending degree is called the baccalaureate.
Yeah.
And that degree, or I think it's a degree. People used to go to work, the straight work. After that, it was, and as time went by, it was like that became the passport to university. So you can't really get a job because you can't get really a job with it, but it's your passport to university. So you need it in order to go to university. If you don't have it, then you're not. It's equivalent of I don't want to say it's the equivalent of GED, but it's an actual degree, and it's recognized all over the world. Like when I had that, they didn't like when I applied to colleges here. They didn't like, oh, what's this? No, okay, you got your stuff. Okay, and they can transfer stuff. But
yeah. Hicham, just to put some context around this. So, how old are you when you first make this choice, or when you first kind of get sectioned off?
Youssef, how old do I think was it, like 13, 15?
Yeah,
was it around that age?
Yeah, 13, 14 years old.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think, in my opinion, pretty early in the game.
Yeah.
To just go,
Yeah. Our second oldest is 13 right now. So he kind of has like some idea of what he wants to do. He wants to be a lawyer and or a politician. So he's living dangerously. but yeah, like the idea of him like making a decision that's going to affect or is it making a decision? It sounds like it's more like taking a test. Is it taking a test, or is it just like your cumulative work up to this point?
You're making a decision as well. Like your scores. Like, for example, if your scores are not high enough, you can't do sciences, and you want to do sciences, you just can't. Your choice is no longer that choice has been taken away.
Gotcha.
So, yes.
So it's like it's a choice you make. If you have better scores, you maybe have more choice.
Yeah.
More choices.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think it happens everywhere in the world, really. Like the stronger, the better grades you have, the more choices of universities you can go into, and things like that. But this is like a choice that you make super early. And I feel sometimes your choices change as you get older.
Yeah.
Something that you liked at 13 or whatever is not the same when you're 16, 17.
Yeah. Well, do you remember at this point? Did you have some idea of what you wanted to do?
I wanted to do sciences because it was they gave me the choice of everything, and most of my friends were going into that. It just felt like I don't know.
Was it something about here? Let me ask you this though, because I think this is an interesting thread to pull on. Was it that there was something you really wanted to do in the sciences, or like your pull to America? I think speaks a little bit. And like how you talk about that, it speaks a little bit to kind of who you are, I think, right? Like you wanted to sciences because it was the best. Like you wanted to go to America because it's the best.
It's not necessarily that I think I had more affinity towards the sciences than the rest, But there was also the part that, and this is nothing to do with my parents or anything like that. It's just in that school, it just felt that. You wanna have the most choice than do sciences. Sciences opens the door to change your mind as you get close to college, or you're going to go to college. So if I went to college and I was like, you know what, I don't want to do sciences, I want to do economy or whatever it takes to do stuff, or I want to do political science, or I want to do literature and stuff like that, then I would be able to switch to it easily.
Yeah.
Right. So I have all the doors kind of open for me. So that's basically the choice I made. It's not necessarily. I mean, I think I had some interesting professors as well. So sometimes, and I think if anything, I spoke about this with my wife the other day, and in the French educational system at that time, right now I think maybe they've updated that, but I wanted to say humiliation was a day-to-day thing. It wasn't snarky comments from the instructor to the student was not uncommon.
Right.
Jokes.
You don't see that these days.
Yeah, you don't see that these days. I mean, I can like in my last year of high school, there was this physics professor that I remember, and I basically characterized him as he shouldn't have been a professor. So he worked for the French NASA called Ariane. So he was a strong mathematically. So he taught physics, right? And he was basically trying to prepare you for, or his, quote unquote, prepare you for college, because in college, like you go to these auditoriums and they don't take attendance, and you write, you just write what you try to assimilate the knowledge there in the classroom. But and before that, in high school, the instructors will write on the board exactly what you need to take down in your notes, right? So you didn't have to worry about complete listening. You just have to write whatever's over there and just take it home and see it again. This guy was a little different. This guy was just writing some stuff on the board and erasing it, writing some stuff on the board, erasing it, just like having a discussion with like as if we were scientists, right? So I'm just there the first time looking at him, like, whoa, I didn't get a chance to write anything, because the guy just keeps erasing stuff. And I'm not following what he's saying, and I'm not the only one that's not following what he's saying. So to go to his class, you had to go prepare, like before coming to class.
If that preparation step wasn't there, you were in that world where like he's talking, but you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. I have no idea what he's talking about. But
and was that like that was not uncommon? Is that
no? That was uncommon. Like that was the first time I come into. And by the way, I have never experienced this in college in the U.S. In the U.S., the people took care to make sure you came out of this class knowing as much. I mean, they like. I think 99% of my instructors in college wanted me to succeed.
Yeah.
This guy, I don't know what he wanted, but because not succeeding in his class, the problem is like the amount of colleges that are now open to you. If you like, for example, my concentration is science, right? If he makes the exams unnecessarily difficult and he gives you these crappy grades.
Yeah.
Even so the baccalaureate is your passport to university, but also your grades throughout the whole year matter to what school you're going to go after college. They're going to take your transcript. They're going to look at your grades, and some colleges might not accept you because of some of the things. But so I was in this class, and this is where like he took it maybe to humiliation to the next level. But and so a lot of times in the French system, like some instructors would give you back your tests, and they will go from like the worst to the best. Like it's not random. It's like some instructors did it randomly. Like here you go, it is just the name. Whoever's there just drop it, or they'll let you pick it up at the end of class. But some of them had the distinct pleasure to come and just like, okay, and the best is, and they give that, or the worst. And so when you're sitting in class, you know who had the worst grade and who had the best grade.
Yeah.
And that was
I remember in fifth grade, my fifth grade teacher did this. I loved him. He was an extraordinary man. His name was Dr. Horn. I think he's still teaching. But he would do this with like Fridays was the test day. And he would after we'd hand in the tests, we'd sit back in the back and grade them while we did other work. And then he would have two helpers pass out the tests. And I think, as I recall, the two helpers were like the two people with better grades, and they would pass out the good grades, like purposely. So you knew if you got your test from him, it was going to be bad. And I remember there's this one science test we took, and there's like a lot of people did really, really well, and I'm like waiting for my. I feel that I did well. I was like waiting for my thing to come up. And I was like, oh no, the students are all done passing it out. Where's mine? And mine was at the bottom of his stack, which is like the worst.
Oh.
But it was 100. He was messing with me. I still remember that though. Like that's fifth grade. I still remember that. And then he would also have us line up for lunch in order of how we did in the tests as well. Like there's nice. So much like I don't know. There's so much incentive. It was so much fun. Like that's what I recall. Like it was hard. It was rough. But it's like fun. It sounds like that's like what the whole system you're describing is kind of like. Yeah.
Okay, so that stuff was not fun. Okay. Like the anxiety of people just sitting there.
I guess it's like a much lower pressure when you're in fifth grade in America. It like doesn't really matter, right? Like it's like a determine your future.
I mean, other classes. There's some classes like how you described. There's very really. I mean, I am friends with some of those instructors on Facebook today. It's like my English teacher, my history teacher, and things. I mean, they were great people, and a lot of them were great. I mean, like sometimes they did this type of stuff, but I felt like, but this guy did it on a different level. It's like, so he would come and everybody kind of did not great, but then he would come, he'd drop. So I remember the first time he dropped. So this is like one of my worst grades ever. That I was like, the gradings are on 20. Right? So he gives me the grade, or he gives me my paper. So first he gives the other people. He comes, he gives this guy 16 out of 20, and 16 out of 20 is good. That's really good, right? That's A and above. That's the beginning of an A. That's 16 out of 20. Then he starts giving people a few other ones, like there's a 13, and he's telling you you're great. 13 and then 11, and I'm like, damn, that's pretty. Like I'm not used to that type of that number, and then it goes 10, and then 9, and then I'm like waiting for my thing, and I'm like, I'm so when you go below 10, that means it's like a non-passing grade.
Oh, right? No.
So
so everyone knew you had.
Yeah, and it's still like maybe a third of the class still didn't get their paper.
Oh man!
And so I get mine 8, and I'm like looking at that, and I'm like, whoa, sometimes the wake up moment. I think I was just looking at myself, what did I do wrong? I mean, anyway. So I know, and somebody else is getting 6, then 5, then we trickle down all to the 3, 2, and then when he comes to the 3s and the 2s and the 1s, this is like the jokes are coming out, and Mr. So and so, the whatever joke he had prepared at that time, right? And I didn't really mind. I didn't really mind. Like in general, I didn't really mind the person giving grades in a certain order. You know? Like, but this guy was announcing, like, hey, Mr. So and so, he did a very respectable 3, and then the other person this guy's the beast. He got 2.5. And they trickled down to this girl. I think it was a girl. At the end, he had the last paper, and he's like, "And this one is the best ever." And he started joking, like before even giving it to her, I think it was her. And then he's like 0.5. Congratulations, you have half a point.
I thought it was going to be like my story. She was going to get the 20.
No, 0.5. And then the thing is, the one thing I just noticed, and maybe this is human nature, the guy who got 1 started laughing at her. So he started laughing, and so I was horrified, right? Like I'm sitting there looking at my grade, like I was like really destroyed with like an 8.
How old were you at this?
I was 17.
17. Okay. So where are you in this journey?
This is my last year of high school.
Okay.
My last year of high school. I had left.
After high school, that's when you get the baccalaureate. I'm not spelling this.
Yeah. The end of high school, you get the baccalaureate. You do this exam. It's an exam that you take. And if you fail it, you have to do the last year again. It's like you can't leave high school until you get this particular exam. You can't go to college. That's why I call it the passport to university. It's like if you don't get this, you're going nowhere. So that was and in this last year of high school. So I said I grew up in Kenya. This paradise place. It's eternal spring. The safaris, the lions, and all that beautiful stuff. By this time, this last year of high school, I went back to Morocco to do it. So not only I was in a completely new place. Like the first time I actually lived in Morocco for an extended period of time. Like I used to go there for vacation. But so new people, knew everything. It's like I dare say I didn't like that. I didn't like that. That year was not that great.
What was it that the schools in Morocco were just like harder than in
Kenya?
No.
This was a French school. So the French school in Kenya, and I came to a French school in Morocco. So it's the same curriculum, same everything. So it was
system didn't change, just location changed.
Just the location really changed. Yeah. So because the baccalaureate, everybody does this. I believe everybody does the same. It's a standardized test all over the world. So if whatever you do it's like if you did it. Like in Kenya, we would have to travel to Addis Ababa or Madagascar to be able to take this test, but it's the same test all over the place.
So. And that's to get the
baccalaureate.
The baccalaureate. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm very
So, yeah.
intrigued by the origins of this word. Like looking at, is this like, I don't know, it looks like Greek. It's standing out as Greek to me for some reason. Like the baka,
Yeah.
was that like
yeah.
Dionysus and stuff? I don't know. I'll look this up off the stream, off the podcast. This is interesting to me. But cool. So okay,
Yeah.
17 years old, you're finishing high school. What's the normal path for someone in the education, the French education to go to? Is like you go to Paris, do you go to France, or do you stay in the area?
So you could stay in the area, and
Okay.
you can go to college in Morocco, and everybody who is Moroccan is free education. Anybody can, who's got this baccalaureate can go and study in college anywhere in Morocco. I don't think it matters even where you live. If you're in one city, you can go to the other. So it's open for everybody.
Are there people who once they get their degree, they're ready to go work, or is this just like okay?
No, yeah. Well, there's probably some jobs you can do because there's people who drop out and etc. But if you don't have your baccalaureate, it becomes difficult. Like you have to go figure out something else, like how to do. I don't know. I don't exactly know, but there's probably another path that to try to get a job from there.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that, college is like closed out for you.
Yeah. Youssef, let me bring you in here because I think we mentioned last week there was you had gone back to where you had you were giving a talk and explaining about like in America there's a lot of there's a big trend with a lot of stuff, especially in like web development where people don't have degrees but they're doing stuff like it's like yeah. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, with the French system, it's completely different than the American system. So the French system, like Hicham mentioned earlier, at a young age, you have to decide if you're going to be an artist, if you're going to be a scientist, if you're going to be an engineer, and that's the track you're going to stay on for the rest of your life.
Right.
It's harsh because you're making a big decision about your life at a young age, 13 years old, 14 years old.
Right.
I remember, like when I made a decision, I think I made the right decision. But still, I mean,
did you do science too, Youssef?
Yeah, I was.
Okay.
It wasn't a choice, so I was lucky, because the thing is, you have to work really, really hard to keep your grades high, and if you have high grades, you automatically go into the science field. If you have mid grades, you go into the arts, like mid or low, you go into the arts. So automatically, they put science on a pedestal, and arts like really low.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, what's funny to me is that, to your point earlier, Zach, is that when I came here to the US, I saw a lot of artists. Like right now in my team, the financial company I work with, a lot of people I work with are phenomenal artists. They're phenomenal, guitar players or musicians. They're just phenomenal musicians. We don't have that. When I grew up, we did not have that, because going into art, like if you go into art, it's not like later on, you're not going to land like really good, paying jobs. So you're going to like work really, really hard to be either a scientist or an engineer. But here, what I like about the US is that it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. At any point in time, you can pivot, right? And completely change your life direction based on new variables, based on new things that you discovered in life. At that time, that was a luxury that did not exist growing up. But here in the US, it did exist. What really blew my mind, I remember my first year in college, is that you get to choose what you want to study, and then you can change your major at any time. There are really no grade per se associated with that specific decision. So there is You can change, you can pick anything you want. Even right now, either one of us want to be a doctor, he can start a journey like today. Like nothing is stopping you from doing so. And another thing I've noticed is that when I graduated my bachelor's degree, there was a gentleman who was in his 80s who just got his bachelor's degree in computer science, and that really blew my mind. That was fascinating to me to see that. Um, as I have mentioned in our previous podcast, I spent the summer in Morocco, and I had a chance to present to a couple of companies in Morocco, phenomenal companies, phenomenal group of engineers, talented people, about the idea of hiring engineers that don't necessarily have a degree.
Right.
And I recall, as soon as and I said that, it was really foreign to them. That specific concept was really foreign. But it was normal. Like I knew I want to get, I knew I'm gonna get that specific reaction. But what's funny is that only a few months later, I had a call from my brother, who is an HR director of one of the companies that I spoke at in Morocco, and he told me that they're currently going down that path, where they're looking into just starting a pilot program that consists of hiring talented individuals
Hmm.
who don't necessarily have a degree. So we can start seeing that, in start emerging in North Africa. And that's what I like about the US. The US always leads when it comes to engineering science. It really always leads the way. Then you have the rest of the world that comes in and just starts implementing similar concepts, which is a really good way of doing it. You let the US, do the whole R&D for the rest of the world. What's gonna work, what's not gonna work. They can, you can, US can afford that, and whatever
This
works, the rest of the world can pick it up and implement it and move forward. So it's really interesting to see that.
this is super interesting because it sounds like from everything y'all are describing about like the French system,
Yeah.
it seems like you'd be positioned better to innovate. But there's something about the American system where even today, like innovation is largely driven by the US.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I completely agree with you. But the good thing about here, about the US, is that you have the luxury of flexibility.
Hmm.
Along the way, you will meet some really talented people who never had a degree in computer science. They are self-taught people. They just, at one point in time, something happened and computer science just appealed to them.
Yeah.
Either they look at an application within their phone they liked, and they start wondering, how can I build something like that? And it's super easy right now to learn about how to build applications. You have tons of resources, Udemy, Pluralsight, YouTube.
YouTube.
Even,
Yeah.
that's amazing. Even the Ivy Leagues themselves, they have a lot of their courses for free,
Yeah.
which is amazing. Like right now, like knowing what I know now, if I have to do it all over, most likely I would not have went to college. I would have maybe just learned whatever I wanted to learn based
Yeah.
on free contents that I have available for me. Because the thing about college, you learn a lot for sure, but really you just learn how to learn.
Yeah.
Uh, but there is a lot of classes you take, they don't really serve you. Like
Yeah.
history classes, right? History classes are good. History classes, chemistry, and a lot of other classes that I don't apply them nowadays, right? But those contents, like I still read a lot of books on my own, but I'm fairly confident I can, even if I didn't go to college, I can focus only what I wanted to learn at the time,
Hmm.
and down the road I can pivot, and on my leisure time, I can learn about history, I can learn about chemistry, and so on and so forth. Um, but I think that what we're seeing right now is really a revolution in the education system. The new generation is flipping the entire thing upside down, right?
Hmm.
Because
You
college is
mean
not
because of like what you were talking about with in Morocco, or are you talking in both sides, America
on
and
both sides. I'm really
Europe?
seeing things change drastically on both sides.
It makes sense. It makes sense given like the age. Like our age is defined by the internet, and that's all this free. Like you were talking about Udemy,
Yep.
YouTube, all this stuff just
Yep.
available freely to people. So
Yep.
that makes a lot of sense. I mean,
Yep.
You also have to think about like the reason. If you think about it, like the internet gives you these extra 5-6 hours a day, where you can actually go and change your career if you like. Let's say you worked all day and something completely different, and you have a computer, then you have, you know, like let's say you finish work at 5, you have like from like 6 to whatever time you go to sleep, the opportunity to change your life based on certain things. I you know the just to segue on or just talk about like the stuff Youssef said about concentrating on something versus, you know, having history and things like that. Like in the French system, once you go to college, you're done with history, geography, and all that stuff. Like you're focused on what you're focused on. Like if it's engineering, you're doing only engineering because high school has given you everything from, you know, like history, geography, like you've like some of the courses I took here in college from, like, you know, geography or history or something like that. It's still stuff but American history I've not done, but world history, you know, I've been through that many times in high school. So it wasn't like for me the class was just like a quick thing. The other stuff I want to also add is that the one thing about America, and this is my impression, but I feel like I think maybe I saw a few people that would agree with this. This is what I've noticed with a lot of people that are really passionate about something, they can turn to be the best at it. Like I don't know, it's just something that I only saw here when I came to America. It's like this, like, you know, if somebody's really interested in insert whatever subject, then they will spend night and day and try and get to that, you know, the expert knowledge of something. Well, elsewhere, I like even in Morocco, I can't think of somebody that was really passionate about something that knows the ins and outs of every single little piece. Like I don't know. It's like sometimes I see stuff on Instagram, or is this guy explaining something? It's like it's like he's so interested in it that he knows every single thing about it, and he could teach a class.
That's a bit different when you see those people, those content providers, right, on Instagram or YouTube. The incentive there is that they're building contents, they're getting eventually paid for it.
Yeah.
You see my point? Like that's what I like about these days is that even if you go, there is no, even back home, you know, internet is global. Even if you go down the art side, the art path side at a young age, you have now the luxury worldwide to pivot at any time because of the internet, right? At any time, you know, you can jump on YouTube, create content, you get paid for it. You can do the same thing in Facebook. You can do the same thing in Medium, in Udemy, in Pearl sites, and all those new sites, which is fantastic. Now, any human being who have access to internet can literally make a living doing whatever he's passionate about. And to Hisham's points, the best people I met in my life that are extremely good at their crafts are people who are passionate about that specific topic. Not necessarily they went to college for it. Most people, like, I don't want to generalize the whole thing, but my experience is that I've seen some people, you know, I worked with, they have a degree in computer science, good colleges, but they've done it not because of passion. It's just because maybe a pressure from family or whatever that is. But when you see somebody who really didn't go to college and end up being on that specific field, it's passion, right?
Yeah.
I met a lot of fantastic people in my career that did that.
Yeah. Interesting. I think the reason why there's that whole thing on the left there that there were people who were able to go to Udemy and go to a site and learn and college. I personally think that college is so. If I had to go through it again, let's say right now,
yeah,
I would probably boot camp first and get like within 3 to 6 months. This assuming I have no knowledge of computer science, whatever. So I would boot camp first, get something that's actually marketable, that I can actually get a job from, and then go to that company, and then get my degree and have them help me pay the degree. I think the degree it would be necessary just in case. Like unfortunately there's a lot of subjectivity when it comes to hiring, when it comes to promotions, when it comes to certain things. If the degree is also something that shows that maybe this it shows if there's a choice. Like let's say they're about to lay off I don't know how many people. Maybe layoff is not a good word, but let's say they want to promote somebody.
Well, there's competition inherent to all of these things, right?
Yeah. So if there's two people that have exactly the same qualifications, they're the same. It could be the fact that this one got a degree and the other guy that doesn't. That makes the guy that has the degree being chosen to stay or being chosen to be promoted, or there's all these subjective things. But I would get a degree on. I'll let the company try to pay a degree. I wouldn't go into student loans. Like my college career could be like 6-7 years to finish it, but as long as I don't have to have student loans, I think that's one of the killers over here. Like in the French system and other places, you don't pay for college, so it's like going to a degree and doing it. It's like, well, it's okay. I can't do anything right now. I'm going to go to college. Now with the internet, that's maybe not a true statement, but the person can go and learn whatever they need to learn. But college is free, so
right.
If you want to go do it, you can do that part time. You can do it. You don't have to worry about having to pay for it for the rest of your life. And so at least from that front, I think.
So sorry, is there structure in place for students to have, like, is there stipends in place as well for them to like live? Or pay for food, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Like being a student in Europe or even in Morocco, there's like you get cheaper. Well, I think even also in the US, I remember I had my student card. I would get like cheap movies and things like that. But correct me if I'm wrong, Youssef, but I think in France they used to, or they still do. They send some money monthly to if you're a student.
Okay.
Yes, which is, I think, for international students. So those are they give money to students who are not French citizens. Those are just international students. So the concept is, think of it this way. Like, as an example, imagine you have international students, such as myself or Hicham, came to the US, and US is giving us free money to study here in the US, like helping us with rents and stuff like that. Automatically, you're gonna see that on CNN and maybe like Fox News saying, "Hey, my tax money is going to those people who are not US citizens." You know what I mean? But this concept doesn't exist. Like, for example, in France and some European countries, students is a students. So what's happened? My wife actually studied in Paris, and she shared my story. She shared her story with me, and she told me that the French government used to give her about $300 a month just to help her with rents. So she did not have to work the first couple of years, because the small help that the government was giving her, plus whatever her parents were giving her, afforded her to just pay for rents and whatever personal expenses she had, monthly expenses, and schooling was free. So university was free. She didn't have to worry about taking any loans or anything like that. In contrast, here in the US, it's very, very hard to go to college in the US without incurring any debt. And what's funny is that international students who come here because of the filtering that happens overseas in embassies, in US embassies. So come study here in the US, they specify how much money you need to have in the account. For example, let's say it's gonna cost you $100,000 for college, let's say like a year. Then the US embassy requires that you have $400,000 in your account cash before you come here in the US. That guarantees the US that you're gonna come here and you're gonna be okay for 40 years without having to, being illegal in the US or work illegally in the US to pay for your education. So all international students that come here, I would say the majority of them, they have no debt when they finish college because those come from really wealthy families or high-class families back home that allows them to do that. Mm-hmm. But the Americans that are local, which I never understood, is that most people I met, they have debt after college. Yeah. And it's crazy to me that you're just about to start your life, your professional life, and you're already really deep in the hole. And I'm talking about really, really deep in the hole. Some people, they have 6 digits when it comes to debt, especially doctors.
Between me and my wife, we're in that range right now.
Yeah, and this is the sad thing is this is not an edge case. This is the norm. It's almost like when I spoke to most people. My wife, she studied in France. She had a couple of degrees from France, and when we got married, she went to GW here in the States, George Washington University. She had her MBA.
Yeah, and
that wasn't cheap.
Yeah,
that was not cheap at all.
I wouldn't imagine so.
So, we managed well, but she still had to take some loans to make ends meet. Was it worth it? Sure. At that specific level, like GW, MBA, now you are really professional, learning from other professional, right? That makes sense. But for somebody who just getting started and he's gonna take a loan on his first year in college, just studying general requirements, right? Basic mathematics, history, English, chemistry, physics, and you take a big loan for that, the return on investments doesn't make sense. It's a bad investment.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. Like the ROI is starting to make less and less sense for Native Americans.
That's why in the US, I mean to interrupt you, Hicham. I just want to finish this point. What I was saying is that here in the US, like what I'll suggest for anybody is don't go to university first if you want to get a degree. For first years, go to a community college.
Yeah.
Go to a community college and knock out all the general requirements that you need to knock out, right? Get a degree from there, and then transfer to another university where you're gonna just study your major, your actual major. And that's exactly what I've done. I went to a community college and knocked out all my general requirements, and then I went to university and I studied 60 credits of just computer science.
Yeah,
it was half the cost of what it was going to cost me, if I went all into university. It was interesting. Sorry, Hicham.
It's interesting that you say that. It's like if I could go back again, I would do exactly what you just said right now. Save me some money in the beginning. And unfortunately, as an international student, I think we talked about it last week, where you give you this visa, this F1 visa. So it's you can stay here for like up and as long as you study, right? And like Youssef said, you have to have the money to be able to study over here, and it's 3 times more what a U.S. like an in-state person would if this is a state school, but like we went. So after Morocco, I came to Norfolk, Virginia, over here.
Yeah, let's come all the way back to Hicham's story.
Wait, it segues from this.
Yeah.
It segues nicely from this. But we went to this school called Old Dominion University. Right. I had a cousin living in Norfolk, so he basically sent me the application, and filled it up, and then came over here. Each credit is 3 times more than what a person in state, or like a person living in Virginia would actually pay. So not only it's like the international, it's quite a big chunk of money that comes out to be able to actually study in the U.S.
Yeah.
So it's not just I kind of feel sad that it took 3 times the credit, because now when I'm taking history, I feel like this is not worth that money.
Hicham, you are hitting some nerves right now. Let me give it just a little bit of background on my situation too, because I have two bachelor's degrees. First one was like in the arts, in theology actually, and then I decided I wanted to go to computer science. Like we were saying, there's some benefits to having the degree, so I decided to go ahead and do that. So like Youssef was saying, started out with community and tech school, tried to do as many gen eds as I could, but you still needed some, of all things, a geology credit to pass that wasn't offered at my local community college. So I have some very expensive knowledge of rocks. And like obsidian, like I did a whole project on obsidian. So it's not just like the money, it's also like the time that was really precious to me at the time. Like I had three, between me and my wife, we had 3 children at the time that we were raising, and it was kind of silly. Like I had to do a lab too, so I was like organizing ways of, like, between me and my wife, trying to figure out ways of getting me to school at 7 p.m. for the lab. So, and like the stuff we would do inside these labs was just kind of silly. Like I remember one of the things you had to do to identify rocks was, for some of them, you have to lick them to see if there's like salty. So like it was just this kind of like ridiculous stuff. I'm thinking, how much am I paying for this?
Did you have to go in the field?
No, it was, so this was in a lab, and we had a course mandated rock collection we had to buy as well. That was like $200, as I recall.
Oh yeah.
You'd have to like walk around with it. Yeah, it's just kind of silly. So you can have your own rocks to lick, I guess. But that
reminds me also with the cost of the books here. Like each book was like $150 to $200, and I was like, "What is this?" It's, and the instructor every year needing the newest edition. So
yeah, one of our professors in Clemson made sure that every year they sold like a custom book that they wrote, so everyone would have to buy it, and it changed a little bit each year, so you could just resell it. I mean, I can't fault him for it.
He would get free. I personally felt that the instructors actually got some commission out of it, or something like that, or they got something, right? And then I think people figured out that the same book, if you buy it from the school, it's like $200, like around the area. But when Amazon came, you could buy that same book. It would get shipped from Thailand or something, but at half the price of the book that you buy at the store.
Right.
So at some point when I took my classes, I would like, in the syllabus, it's like, okay, you need this book and stuff like that. Oh, and I also noticed that instructors never even use the book. Yeah. So that even pissed me more. So what I used to do is I used to make sure that they were actually going to use the book. So I wouldn't buy the book until there's some actual thing to be done with the book. And sometimes the library had the book. So I would rush to the library, take the book out, and then go from there. So I managed to save up a little bit of money when I was like, you know what, I don't really need this. I don't need this book. I can actually buy last year's edition for a quarter of that price. But yeah, that was a ripoff, I think.
Yeah. How often does knowledge of Obsidian change? Really, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, not much
information.
Yeah.
Well, especially when we're living in the age we're living in, like we're talking about. This is the information age. Like all this stuff is like free on YouTube, and someone's getting like, subscriptions.
They add a couple of sentences or a paragraph here and there, and then it's a new edition. And now the professor tells you to go buy the new edition, not the old one. And the book costs like $300. One book. That's you're probably not gonna use at all, and you cannot really resell it because they're gonna come with a new edition. Now it's gone. It's just business. I mean, it's crazy how much money students pay here to acquire knowledge. But again, I mean, to your point, Zach, this is the day and age of information. Like all that information, you can literally learn it from internet. Right.
Yeah.
If you guys remember the movie with Matt Damon, Good Will Hunting, you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Right. And he was a really smart guy in Boston, and he was hanging out at a bar, and one Harvard student was trying to make fun of his buddy, and he jumped in, and Matt Damon just schooled him.
Yeah.
And he told him, I mean, it's like, I don't understand why all this knowledge you go and pay hundreds and thousands of dollars for at Harvard, you can go get it for $10 in a library.
Yeah,
$10 a year. But at that time, it was just a library. But imagine now how much content we have access to through the internet.
That's such a good point, Youssef.
So that's impressive how that movie was way ahead of its time. That specific sentence that Matt Damon said in the movie was way ahead of its time.
Yeah. Well, I think it points to... Oh, go ahead.
There's one thing. Just funny thing about that. I think it applies. That statement applies to everything, every college, maybe, except maybe the Ivy League colleges. The fact that you have the word Harvard on your resume, or Yale or Princeton or thing like that makes a difference. And maybe not in computer science, but if you're a lawyer or something, and it says Harvard on that, you came from Harvard, you're automatically starting at six figures, and you're automatically going, well, as long as you're competent, like there's a lot of people that graduate that are not good when it comes to the actual job. But, most likely if you've graduated from Harvard and you're a lawyer, then, through the connections you've made in college, with the fraternities and sororities, etc.
Yeah.
Then now, that place, like if I would become a lawyer, then I would try to get into Harvard if I could, to be able to do that stuff. And there's one thing, like I also learned, like with Ivy League schools, is they ask you to apply, even if you don't have the money. Even if you don't have the money, they ask you to apply. So if you manage to get in and you don't have the money, they'll find a way to pay for it.
Yeah.
So I think with the Ivy League schools and these specific, like lawyer and certain things, like where there's the prestige of what college you went to, that opens doors to some other things. So I think the opportunity cost, the ROI there may be a little higher than like, for example, where we went to school, where I did 4 years of computer science, and by the time I came out after the fourth year, the world has changed, and while algorithms are still the same and things like that, but a lot of people, like at least where I was, didn't really use C++ that much anymore.
Yeah.
So I knew C++. I'm like, hey, I'm ready to go. And it's like, well, my first job after graduating is like, I need to write this thing in Perl. So then I had to go learn Perl to do that stuff. And then after that, it was something else, and then JavaScript. And I have never for my professional career, written anything in C++.
Yeah.
And I went to school and I learned C++ as the main thing. So
yeah, same. Like it was C actually at Clemson is where you got started, and then you went into Java at some point down the curriculum. But I feel like a lot of the curriculums are now realizing, like, just the nature of our businesses, these things change. So don't teach the language, like teach how to learn the language, right? But going back to Yusuf's point, because it's interesting because we went exactly the way the movie went with that line, right? Because he was like his line was like at the end of the day, you're going to spend like 6 figures on a degree that you could have got with $10 in late library fees. But the guy comes back, the Ivy League kid comes back and says, yeah, well, when me and my kids are going through the drive-thru at McDonald's, you can tell me about how much less you paid for the same knowledge. Like that was kind of the joke, is that like yes, the knowledge is there, but it's like it sort of gets to like this idea of nepotism that we kind of talked about in our Lost episode. That I think like a lot of this stuff starts coming together, like the nepotism of, well, someone has the resources, someone's family has the resources to send them to the Ivy League. So even if someone has the capability to do what they do, the nepotism of the system is there that makes sure they get the high paying job, and you kind of like lose this meritocracy. And there's this we could go to like I had something of a thought over here that I thought would be interesting to dive into a little bit, especially with like focusing on a field of study here. Like, so this is back in the French system.
Oh yeah.
So if the goal for a lot of these things is innovation, and that's something the American system seems to be really, really good at. And I think it's mainly driven by these incentives, right? Like there's
one thing that is good about a couple of things before we move to the subject. In earlier about Harvard and Ivy League schools. What you pay for there in those Ivy League schools is not education, is the network. Because as soon as you get in, that's it. You are part of a network of a well-established, connected people that after you graduate, you're guaranteed success. Because going back to nepotism, right? Like a buddy of yours whose dad is maybe CEO in a company or something like that can fund an internship in a really good, company. So you in Ivy League schools, the difference there is that what you're paying for is not education, but it's a membership. You have a membership now, be part of a specific network, a really, really awesome network. That's what you pay for that.
Yeah, and lastly on the stuff of nepotism, like I think we did speak about it the last time. Is like overseas, it's like very, very like it's a normal thing, right? Like your father works in a company, will bring you in into the company, and nobody's gonna think twice, think twice about it, And in America, it's a little bit different. Where while that happens, I think maybe at the very, very rich level, it does happen. And I think it comes back to that statement, like it's who you know, not what you know. If you really think about there's more. I think in America, there's more chances. I said that. I'm trying to remember the word I said last time. It's like it's over here. Where you work hard and then you can make it. Okay, I think I said something. Yeah, I remember that last week. Like I was in France in 2019, and I was just talking to this guy, was Uber guy, just driving us around, and a few of them, the same thought came where, like, the more you work, the harder you work, there's opportunity in America. Like, work hard, you can make it, you can go to success by yourself. Like, you don't need anybody to give you that opportunity, right? While in what he was telling me in France is that's not the case. Like you do best you can, but there's a ceiling that you will reach unless somebody breaks you. I'm sure in America too. But I think at a lower lower level. I mean, if you look at right now, just think, age was a limiting factor of where you would be. When I say that is, it has changed in America. Like right now, you have, like I noticed, you can have in a big company, somebody could be a director or VP at 23. You know, like just maybe 15 years ago, that's like the only way that would happen is if you had your own startup, or you were genius level, or something like that. You know, in a previous company, the joke was, if you don't have a little gray here, you ain't coming to management. Like that's like a little bit of gray, and we were joking like maybe I should just dye my hair a little bit gray, and, you know, to be able to do that.
The distinguished look.
Yeah, the distinguished look. That like you know, I mean, things have changed, but you know, age. There was a lot of like biases against. I mean, for age, like you're too old to go to school, and to Youssef's thing about the 80-year-old guy. You know, that's I think that's one of the surprises when you come to America, and you notice that it doesn't matter what your age is. Nobody in school looks twice. Like you could be whatever, how old you are. You're in the class. Nobody would give you a second look.
Yeah. We mentioned it last week, but my grandmother went back to school after raising her children. The situation, like, is going back to resources again. But the situation at the time, I think she had 2 years of college, and then dropped out because her husband, my grandfather, was becoming a doctor, and they were needing to focus the resources there. So she had to drop out, and she was I think she was raising my father at the time too. But so it's all these things. But she went back. She went back later in life and got her master's in counseling, and had a career based off that, where she was helping people. And every time I tell that, like when I tell it to you, that sounds like a great story. That sounds like this really cool thing. And she would tell us that, like, her obviously her classmates are younger, but they were very nice. they were kind.
That's amazing.
Yeah. My mom, I remember she always wished that she could come, like, and do something. And I told her, like, in America, it's a possibility. Where Morocco and other places, no. Like once you've passed a certain age, it's like very somewhat rigid, shameful. Like. It's kind of shameful. I don't know why learning is there, but it's people will. It feels like shameful to go to school. Like once you've passed the age, then it's like it's sports. Like once you're in your prime. Like once you're done, you can't do it anymore. I'm sure there's exceptions, and maybe this day and age they've changed that, but it's interesting.
I wanna circle back to earlier where you were going, Zach. Innovation.
Yeah. Yes, let's do that.
Yeah. So just to get the conversation started there. If Zach, if you have a really good product that sells, right? Really, you built a mug, right? You're the first person who built a mug. What will drive you to keep innovating on that specific mug? Like you have a mug that sells millions of dollars a month, right? Will there be any reason to innovate at all? To keep making that mug better and better, come up with different colors, come up with knowing that you're making millions of dollars a month on that. Like, what would be the incentives there to innovate?
Well, money, right? Well, let's take a step. Let's take a step back before we get into this, because I think there's and this would kind of like segue well into like the latter half of our discussion last time too. Yeah. But so like you said, Youssef, I have a very prestigious company. We make these quality mugs for people of all walks of life, right? So what, like, the goal of this company is that we're making a product that is conveying some value to society, right?
Yeah.
Like the fact that these mugs exist, the fact that you can purchase them, builds for better society, builds for a better human race. Let's say, even if it's at some very small level.
Yeah.
So the question comes up like, how do we incentivize these kind of companies to come up where they're kind of properly aligned incentives to like drive that value, while also like, me as the mug owner, like I'm a pretty virtuous person, right? So maybe you don't have to worry about me, but but for a lot of people, you didn't make the mug company necessarily to make a better society. You made it for a better, your life. You wanted to get money so that you can, live the life you want to do. Like that's in a proper system. It seems like those are the things you want aligned. So Zach or whoever it is, Hicham the cat is, I think.
What I was gonna say there is that just to speed up trying to reach the point like as fast as possible. Competition drives innovation. Without competition, most people, most corporates would have absolutely no incentives of innovating. Think Macintosh, Apple versus Microsoft back in the days. If Apple existed without Microsoft, or Microsoft existed without Apple, I don't think that we would have the computers we have right now. Because the only reason those two kept innovating, right, is trying to beat each other. So that's why they had to go compete at an insane level to make the best and the greatest products they can make, right? And this actually applies everywhere, right? Literally applies to a mug, the example I gave earlier, to something as big as Apple or Microsoft. Browsers, we all know that, right? Remember the browser war we had before? Internet Explorer versus WebKit browsers. Imagine the pain we had to go through because the APIs were not the same. When you build a web app, right? When you make an HTTP request in IE 6 or 8 or 9, the API was not similar. And when you go to like a WebKit browser, like to Firefox or Chrome, that was very, very, very painful. jQuery kind of solved that problem at the time. That was really nice of John Rezig to do that for us. But it just, my point here is that without competition, there will be really no reason to innovate. And that's why the US is number one in the world when it comes to innovation, is because it's a free market, because it's a demographic, it's democracy. Anybody can open its own company to build anything they want. It's easy here. It's really easy. But other parts of the world, right, it's very hard to open your own company. So that's why they will not innovate as much, because there is no competition. Not anybody can create a company to compete with other people. In fact, they will go at certain lengths to not let you compete, because they want some specific people. There is some corruption involved. They would like to have some specific people to just keep making that specific products for them, so those specific people can make, only those people make the money. So that's the point I was trying to get to, is that link innovation to competition and link competition to democracy. Without democracy, you will not have competition. And without competition, you will not have innovation.
Right. And interestingly, it segues to another, I keep saying the segue word, but the conversation we had last week, where, we look at all that, I think competition, the Monday Night Wars, like, and also how Youssef and I met. There you go. And how Youssef and I met.
It all comes together.
It all comes together. As let me tell the story again. So it's like Youssef and I were friends for over 21 years now.
21 years.
And so I was in college. So sitting down, everybody left for Christmas break. I'm sitting, and I used to live in a 5-bedroom duplex, and everybody had gone back for the Christmas break, and so the guy who was managing the duplex comes. It was like, I don't know what. I think it was on a Monday. It was a Monday. The reason I remember it was a Monday is because when our friend Ricky introduced me to Youssef, and he's like, "Hey, this guy's gonna be your roommate," and he's like, "Okay." I was like, "Hey, come on in, have a sit down."
Oh, y'all were roommates.
Yeah.
Is still talking now? That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And what I was watching Monday Night Raw, and he was like, "Hey, have a seat over here," and we just started watching Stone Cold and The Rock, and what was it that Yusuf, you remember maybe what the episode was?
Oh yeah, it was like it was The Rock talking to the Big Show. And you know there is this song, like whenever a wrestler comes in, there is this song that started right for the Big Show. It was like, "Here comes the Big Show." The Rock was making fun of him. He picked up the microphone and he said, "Here comes the Big Slow." You know,
he's a big bad slow now.
That was hilarious, man. That was amazing. The Rock was good at that time.
Oh yeah.
Were you a big fan of wrestling too, Youssef?
I was not. Like, I had absolutely. Even now, like, I'm not a big fan of wrestling, but because of Hicham, I was forced to sit down and watch 2 hours of it.
Every Monday.
It was not voluntary. Like Hicham, my first day, Hicham had it on TV. He was like, "Hey, come hang out with me in my room." It's my first day. I'm not going to tell him, "Hey, dude, give me the remote control and put something else." You know what I mean? Just being polite, just watching whatever the guy's watching is really nice to me and all that. And I thought it was funny. It was hilarious. So, whenever he's watching it, I go to his house and I'll watch it with him. But it was not something I would go and turn on myself on TV. But man, it's entertaining. We did go to a dog show, right, Hicham, in ODU.
I've never been to a live one.
I went to a live one. They had Triple H.
Yeah,
they didn't have Lesnar, Brock Lesnar.
No. You know what? I want to say that he went to the UFC at that time.
Okay, so Hogan wasn't there. I know vividly Triple H and Batista.
Yeah, and Ric Flair.
Batista, and Triple H were there.
It was during the Evolution days.
Yeah.
I remember that.
That's like the recreation of the Horsemen. Yeah.
I remember that. So I mean, I guess I can know a lot about wrestling just because of Hicham. Because imagine like 21 years of friendship. How many hours I had to sit down and watch it with him because of that.
You make it sound like it was a painful scene.
No, it wasn't.
He's just trying to look good to the podcast audience. Oh, I don't know about wrestling, but Hicham liked it.
But it was hilarious. Like I tell you, man. Like that's how we get to know who The Rock is. Who like all those people. And I was watching. I remember The Rock was at his prime at the time. And I thought it was the funniest thing ever, and like the way how he really masters the microphone when he picks it up, make fun of people, make fun of the I forgot his name. He used to call him the Hamburglar. His name
the Hurricane.
Yeah.
The Hurricane. You ain't nothing. 100 times and nothing. Cloud. It's nothing. He knows you.
Jericho was his name. Jericho.
Chris
Jericho. It was making fun of him. He's like your uncle, like Jimmy Jack Jericho, the guy with one eye.
The guy with the glass eye. The people right now, like when you watch it right now, I just go through the mechanisms, watch it, maybe it's recorded, I watch a little bit and things like that. But back then, there was no. I couldn't record it. It was like it didn't repeat another time. You had to go and watch it around that time, flip the channels between Nitro and Monday Night Wars, and that competition made the ratings of the amount of people that watched that show. It was just but once the WWE bought WCW, then it just started dying, and Oh yeah, maybe also the old stars have left, so it's not as great as it once was. But
Yeah. Well, let's go into that a little bit for just for our audience who might not be familiar, right? So Hicham, do you want to maybe tell the story about like the two companies, or would you prefer I do it?
No, you said it nice, eloquently the last time. Go ahead.
Let's see if I can recreate it. Does that sound fair?
Sure.
So yeah. You go back before like the 80s, and you have like the wrestling is like evolved from like this kind of catch wrestling kind of thing that you kind of see at carnivals, right?
Right.
And it's like a spectacle you would see if you went to the fair or something like that. But as you know, people realize, hey, there's something here. Like people kind of like watching this. You see the different camps kind of form up in the different regions around the U.S., especially on the East Coast. And so you have then these two bigger entities like WCW and the WWF, and now it's the WWE. The kind of Vince McMahon is up in the north, building up his WWF there, and like Hulk Hogan's like the key character because he's from Manhattan, I guess, from New York, which was like the mecca of wrestling at the time. But then you also have down in the South, interestingly, Ted Turner, the guy from TNT and TBS, is building up
CNN.
And CNN. Yeah, CNN. That's a big one. But so he's down there in Atlanta, and he's building up his brand like the WCW. I don't know how much he was involved, but you come to a point where both of these entities are kind of buying up all the different regional businesses, and you have this like kind of 50-50 split at the end where this breeds this like really interesting time where we called it the Monday Night Wars, where the WCW's flagship program, I think it was called Monday Nitro, and Raw's best program, Monday Night Raw, are both live, both going at the same time, and you would like switch back and forth between the channels because there's no TiVo back then. So like the job you were talking about, like you would record one and watch the other, and you maybe flip back and forth in the commercials. So
no, you didn't have time to record. It was flipping back, like you just flipping, and whichever was better, you'd stay, and then you flip again, and you're like, oh, so.
Yeah,
that's why you were flipping, Hicham. Okay, now
it's like
I got it 21 years later.
Yeah. So you would get like, well, the way the WWE tells it, and WWE eventually won out, and they bought out WCW and all their IP. Like you can, I think even now, if you get their streaming service, you can see like all the WCW stuff because they own all the IP now. Like they own it all. So they won essentially, right?
They essentially won. I actually think it was because the other people stopped competing. I think something happened to Ted Turner at that time where there was that AOL merger. AOL Time Warner merger, and Ted Turner had, I think he was forced out or something like that. And I don't know how involved he was in WCW, but because he was forced out, the people at AOL saw no incentive to keep. Like they're like, you know what, this doesn't match our whatever. Let's sell this thing out.
Yeah.
And in their I don't know why they did that, but these people sold it off, and then eventually that AOL Time Warner was a big flop, and.
Well, and that let Vince McMahon kind of win the war. But the way they tell it, at least, the big difference between the two was WCW was offering these guaranteed contracts to all their performers. So you come, and this is what got Hulk Hogan to come over. So Vince McMahon's like star actually got bought out by WCW, and everyone thought, okay, that would be the end. Like Hulk Hogan's gone. Let's see. So like. Hulk Hogan went over. I think like Bret Hart, all the big names started going over.
He legitimized WCW. Like as soon as Hulk Hogan came, he became like oh crap, this entity is legitimate. Yeah, it's a thing. So I mean, people forget like kind of what Hulk Hogan was to this business. You know, I grew up watching this guy, and over there in Kenya, and like you watch this guy, it's like it was him, Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, and it was just like this guy larger than life type guy, and even though he had some controversy in a few years ago, it's like at least in my book he can take a pass. This guy can okay, for what he did to my entertainment and how I grew up, I'll forgive him for a few things and continue watching. Like I went to Clearwater, went on vacation one time to his thing trying to see. Hey, and I called him. I was like, hey, is Hogan gonna be there? Just need to take a picture with him. Just need to thing. But never had the chance. The one time I was actually going to be in the same building. It was on a SmackDown in DC, and it's Hulk Hogan. I'm like, my wife and I were just there. I wanted to be in the building, to hear that song "Real American." Yeah, right. That iconic song of his. And I came to the show, and I'm waiting, and I was like, okay, he'll come at the end, right? Yeah. And then the show ends, and I'm like, what happened? Where's Hogan? And I turned to people behind me. I was like, what happened? Where's Hogan? He's like, oh, he was the first one to come out. Like in the pre-show, this is even before the thing started at 8. He came out, did his promo, and then left. And then I was like, man, that sucks. But I mean, Youssef and I, we met like that. So at that time, so I already had, I think, a few years in college. So I had come, and let's talk about a thing that will relate to reinventing yourself and changing your career. I remember, so I came here, I was doing civil engineering, and I had done all this physics, chemistry, math, and thing that I didn't want to do mechanical engineering. I didn't want to do electrical engineering. I think civil engineering is like, hey, I can help build bridges and things like that. I don't know. I just didn't know. I was like civil engineer, but I had to choose. When I was doing the application, so I was like, so I was going. I think the first classes were since I did some intensive math and chemistry courses and physics courses in Morocco, in the French system. This was like pretty easy, and my advisor at the time had given me like these courses, and he's like, "Hey, every engineer needs to take a CS course, computer science course." So that's the course I struggled big time. Like everything else was super easy, but the CS course was I couldn't get the concepts, and I didn't have a laptop, and I had to go to the library. I mean, it was once I bought the laptop, then I was able to try to get that in. But it's funny. It's like my mom had called me, and she had talked to one of our family friends, and she had told him that Hicham is in the U.S. He's studying civil engineering, and that guy was like, "Hey, what is he going to do with civil engineering?" Like, no, the computer science is where it's at, and stuff. So she calls me. She says, "Hey, your Uncle Khan, he said this and that," and I was like, "Oh, really?" And I was just standing in front of the computer science building when the mom told me that. I was like, "Okay." I talked for a little bit, and then I went in. I went to the department. I was like, "Hey, how do I change to computer science?" And the guy was sitting there. And he's like, "Oh, what's your number?" Or like at that time we used social security number. It's funny. It's like I actually gave him my social security number. Which actually everybody, even international students, if they work on campus, they need to get a social security number.
That's interesting.
I mean, you can't work outside the school, but in school you can work a little bit. Yeah. So the guy just tells me, "What's your social?" I do my social, and then 2 seconds later, he tells me, "Congratulations, you're in the computer science program." And that's how I changed my major, and then from there it's like I found it fascinating. Like in Morocco, I haven't worked with computers too much. The extent of my knowledge of computers was how to play Prince of Persia. On the computers, on a Commodore 64, and coming here, like I had to get a laptop. I spent probably, I don't know, there's some days I didn't sleep just trying to figure out, what object-oriented programming meant,
Yeah.
what this meant, and the resources we have today, if I had the same resources, I would have probably, quickly got up to speed. But the only thing I had was the C++ Bible. It was like this a book this thick.
Yeah.
And some crappy IDE, something called Borland C++. So it was like compared to VS Code and what we have right now, that was really crap. But at that time it was the best. And I had to understand what the guy was saying, and the way it was written in books. They didn't understand the concept of examples.
Yeah.
So that was like change to that. It was just as easy. Like if I was in Europe, that would not have happened. I would have been civil engineer, and I would have continued on, and whatever come, and in America it was, hey, just change, and here you go.
Yeah, I think there's two. So wanted to tie it back to innovation. Like there's something about this system where you can easily switch between the two, but where you can also just continue to learn about the two, like having a deep knowledge of the humanities. That a lot of innovation is sort of like interesting Venn diagrams or interesting intersections of two fields. Like computer science, there's a lot of people in computer science right now, right? Like we're like,
we don't have enough.
Yeah, we don't have enough. That's true, but there's a lot of us, and we still need more and more. Eventually, that'll get fulfilled. Probably, we'll see. We'll see how far like the data age goes. But there is some element of, well, if you want to innovate, or even if you're just thinking about the individual, if you want to stand out, it's hard to stand out at the top of that pile, right? If all you're looking at is computer science, but if you have some outside interest that is maybe unique, or maybe two outside interests or something like that, you can kind of create this really interesting intersection that can lead to some real huge innovation that could provide, going all the way back to what we were talking about over here, like wanting to build the better value for society, better society at the end of the day. You can do that by combining these to someone else would look like unrelated fields, but you combine them in an interesting way. And that's where a lot of this innovation can come from. Like I don't want to cheapen like the R&D side of it. There's definitely that side of things where you just got to roll up your sleeves and you got to do the hard work to actually get to like that next step in computer science. And props to people doing that. But it seems to be like the easier way is just like have some outside interest, combine those together in some interesting way. And there's a lot of low hanging fruit, I think, left in that orchard versus like waiting for, I don't know whether we can go in the analogy, but y'all see where I'm going.
I think eventually when we start talking about the carousel of tech, I think that will play a little bit thing. Is like the innovation. Some of the innovation is just a repeat sometimes of what has already happened before. Like especially when it comes to what algorithms we're going to use, what the union data, directional flow of data, and I don't know. Maybe there's not the time to talk about it right now, but I just like just a quick example is like like opinionated versus non-opinionated frameworks or things like that, right? Like there was a time where it was like opinionated, like for example, take Prettier, right? Like formatting, like at some point it's like let anybody format however you want. You want single quotes, you want double quotes, just go ahead. Do whatever you want within the same file. Within the same file, you could you want to name a variable a certain way. Doesn't matter. Go ahead. Who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares? You want to Camel Casey? You want a Pascal Casey? Who cares? Just do whatever come. It's like it's your opinion. Do whatever you want. And then now we're getting like I feel it's come through. But no, before that, when I was doing my C++ time, everything was opinionated.
Right.
And then it became unopinionated, and now it's going back to opinionated. No, let's keep the same format. Let's not waste time figuring out what, like, imagine the code review. I remember how many code reviews.
Don't even get me started.
Can you add a space here?
Yeah. Oh, or instead of if else is here, could we just like return in the if? Like, it's just like, what are we doing? Like, sure, whatever. Yes.
Yeah. It's like a circle of things that come back, you know. And it's really interesting.
It definitely is.
As the journey of tech, you know.
Journey of tech.
Yeah, I think the last time when we were here, we talked about like when I first, like, it's my first job after college, after getting that, and then going in, and the first job after college is the same company. So Youssef and I worked in many different companies, like basically doing like, so we started with one company, and then we went to another and another, and two startups, and this last one. Yeah. And you see what we talked about last week about like the military the military and the legacy approach and stuff. Yeah,
that was around management. Is what we discussed. Is that nowadays we are more servant leaders. It's not, when you have a team, it's not about what the team can do for you, but what can you do for your team.
Right.
You see what I mean? And you can see all those diagrams and those GIFs that people created where before it shows you like the leader is on top of the chariot and people pulling that chariot, right?
Yeah. I love that one, actually.
Right. It shows you actually the leader is at the front pulling the chariot with the rest of the people. Yeah. And it's very, very interesting how it got switched. And back in the days, you and I, Hicham, worked like in 6 different companies, and we've seen all style of managements. And if you recall this particular style of management that really haunts us until these days, right? Where your opinion doesn't matter. And they will tell you that. They would literally explicitly, your opinion does not matter.
Yeah, what was it y'all said last week? It was like, tell me everything I need to know in 30 seconds or less. Or something like that.
50 words, 50 words or less.
Oh my gosh.
In 50 words or less.
That was amazing. I mean, I was there witnessing that, and I think Youssef, you're there witnessing that, and the shock, from the guy, and I was like, I had to turn around, because I was like, what, I can't look at the guy's face. I need to focus on something else.
Yeah.
But
if you tell something like this right now to anybody, that's an HR call. Yeah. Right away.
Yeah.
HR, somebody's gonna call, and you have a conversation. I'm gonna have to go do some sensitive training, sensitivity training, and things like that, And the reason I think I brought this subject up is that I think it ties with innovation.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe the Steve Jobs type innovation, there is that like the hammer coming out. You gotta create. It's like I don't know how Apple was able to create that all that stuff with that type of leadership. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I don't know. Right now, I'd probably hate my life if he was my boss.
Yeah.
Right? And but like when it comes to innovation, doing things like, I don't know, just think about NPM and all the stuff that's in there. All this person that spends time doing things. I mean, there's so many innovative types of things that creating frameworks, creating like React, Angular. I mean, there's like so many things that we have right now at our fingertips. Like I don't know if leadership. I think leadership matters in that innovation.
Yeah. I think that kind of like jumps to like where that discussion ended. Do we still have time? Do we still have time to kind of dive into this discussion?
3:00. I think it's a good stopping point.
Yeah, I think so. Because this is a whole thing. I'd love to get into at some point.
We can definitely regroup again next week if you guys are in for it.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah,
Let
I'm
me
good with
do
that. Yeah,
Sounds
I'm interested in
great.
talking to the casual of tech because that's something that Youssef and I we talked about quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On thing. And that the other one though they said the value and output because it's part of our lives right now. You know we are so entrenched into trying to do the right thing and trying to motivate and try to be different leaders as we've had. I mean, don't get me wrong. We've had some great managers. The guy who comes up to mind. I don't know if you're gonna hear this, but Edo Siki was like my first manager, and it was just like, man, this guy was just amazing. And I mean, there's many of them. There's Alan Ditzel, and there's like so many. Like, I'm only dropping their names is because I will send them this link to this so they can see.
And I'll have to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, I'll probably yeah watch the whole thing. I dropped your name.
Yeah. Just get through all where we talk about the big slow, and you'll see it eventually.
I mean, there's multiple people. I think at some point, like maybe next time, is like I want to talk about like we have shared mentors, like Youssef and I.
Yep.
And
that's something I'd be very interested in as well. Let me copy some of these things just to put in the bank for next time. So let's do innovation. Let's do mentorship, because I think that's something I've been thinking about a lot, just in terms of like how to get it and how to receive it.
Mentorship and connections. Like there's people that come into your life, and we'll talk about it. Like Mike Lohr, Andy Santos. We drop them again so that they can. When we think that we drop, there's these people we can talk about that that you meet them and then your trajectory in life just changes a little bit, and for the better. So yeah, looking forward.
It'd be nice to have them here in one podcast. Have one of those mentors, have like a dedicated session for them. I already approached one of them. I already spoke to Andrew, and he said he'd be happy to do it around January. I have not spoken to Mike Lohr yet, Hicham, but we can talk to him. Those are phenomenal people. They've been in the game long before us, Hicham and I, and they have a lot to say about innovation because both of them, they were actually co-founders of a company that got sold to SAP for billions of dollars.
Dang!
So they got
a lot of time for mentorship now, I
imagine. They're just the most genuine people you will ever meet.
Genuine and generous. It's
genuine, generous, really good, awesome, phenomenal people. So I already approached one of them. He said he can do it in January. We'll talk to Mike Hicham to see whenever he want to show up. But Zach, I think that this should be like this specific episode should be like part 1.
Yeah. Well, part 1.5. Part 0 was lost. Part 0 was lost due to incompetence.
No, that's fine. It's okay. We had a really good conversation last week. I think this should be part 1 of many other mini series we will have.
I'm completely on board with that. These are the kinds of conversations I'm really excited to have and continue to have with y'all. So, Hicham, thank you so much for sharing your story. Youssef, thanks for coming along and providing awesome context. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next week with some more. So,
all right, thank you guys.
Next time.
Thank you.